Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Guys Who Look at Stats. I'm your host, Cade Kennedy, alongside my co-host, Connor Gray, and it has been a eventful day, the last 2 days, really, especially in college football. If you haven't heard by now, the Big 12 will be expanding, and for the first time in over a decade, in a few years, the Big 12 will have 12 teams.
It'll actually live up to its name, the Big 12.
I know. I mean, conferences don't like to really do that anymore. I mean, the
No.
Big Ten has how many teams at this point?
Have 14.
Exactly. I'm just surprised the Pac-12 doesn't have 10 or 8 or 16 at this point.
Yep.
They're the only consistent ones left. Now, getting started on that here, well, who are these four new teams that are going to join with Oklahoma and Texas leaving? We go from 10 to 8 and then from 8 back to 12. So who are these four? We've got UCF, the University of Central Florida. The Knights have had an absolutely fantastic past few years and have done a really good job rebranding themselves.
Oh, most definitely.
Especially with the whole who actually won the 2017 national championship. You know, it's funny because we joke about that now, but at the time, that really was a great marketing move by UCF.
Oh, most definitely. Weren't they like the only undefeated team that year?
I believe so. It was them and Alabama, I want to say, and they beat Auburn, who beat Alabama. So I mean, that technically works.
If you look at it that way, then yeah.
Yeah, if you count transitive wins, then UCF definitely has a claim there. And I believe there was one computer poll. I want to say the Colley Matrix, but I'm not sure. One of the computer polls ended up putting UCF at 1, so they went ahead and claimed it. So I believe if you actually look at the NCAA record book for the year, it does say national champions Alabama, and it's pretty much every major source, and then UCF, and it's this one poll.
Yes, one poll. Oh, but it's one way to market yourselves, and plus now the Big 12 has the Florida area to get out to recruit out of.
Exactly, and you have the Orlando TV market, and that might stretch into the Tampa market. You have that whole area there to work with.
Oh, most definitely.
And even Miami and Jacksonville, and that, I mean, opening up the entire state of Florida, really, which, I mean, a lot of kids already are recruited from the Florida area. This just helps it even more. Now, UCF is not the only ones, as the University of Houston is also sending an application to join, and they are expected to be admitted. Houston, in my opinion, this is kind of not a weird move. This is definitely a move we have thought of for a long time coming.
They were always like that first team to reconsider bringing in, because it's another Texas team, plus Houston is one of the largest cities in the country, and you still keep your hand in a big market, even though you still have these other Texas teams. Houston's kind of like, well, since we lost Texas, let's just add another Texas team, is more what it seems like, rather than really being kind of like its own, like as a really big move.
Exactly. I think it was just kind of odd for me because 5 years ago we were in this exact same kind of situation. Yeah. If the Big 12 does expand, who will they add? And Houston was always one I kind of thought of as, I really don't want them to be a Power 5, because at the time they had all momentum. They had all the resources. They had just gotten, I think, their first 5-star commit. They had Ed Oliver, if you remember those Houston teams, back when Tom Herman was the coach there. And it just kind of felt like, no, thank you. I don't want them to have any more power than they already do. We already saw what happened when they were a member of the Southwest Conference. But now that Oklahoma and Texas are out, as an Oklahoma fan, really doesn't matter to me anymore as long as we don't lose to them.
But I think it's a way, since you're adding some freight that is very much needed for the conference. So really all I can say is that it's a good move. I know you have Dana Holgorsen now coming back to the Big 12, since he's now the coach at Houston.
That first time Houston and West Virginia play each other, that might actually be a very fun ball game. I'm sure there'll be a lot of West Virginia fans who would be happy to get a win over Holgorsen. Now, the next member we have up is Cincinnati. Now, I think Cincy has done a really good job as well building. I mean, you got Luke Fickell there as the head coach. You made it to the New Year's Six last year. This is kind of like UCF, where all the momentum is already riding in your favor the past few years.
Yeah.
And plus, you open up the state of Ohio, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Columbus area. I mean, Ohio's a hotbed for recruiting as well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's another good addition,
I
I
mean,
think.
Cincinnati, through a good fair amount of its years, I would say I'm more familiar with the time between like the 2000s through to now, is that they've had good teams. I mean, Travis Kelce played for the Cincinnati at one point,
Yeah,
but uh, it's like you open up the state of Ohio to get recruits. Plus, you're bringing in a team that is real is riding hot right now, and is really good, especially with the way they built their program. Last few years, now obviously they have one of the biggest shots currently as a group of five as of now to make the college football playoff, which obviously is very exciting. But with them now being part of the Big 12, it's like, hey, Big 12 is actually making some moves.
exactly. And then the final member we have is someone you would expect in BYU. Now, BYU for a long time has been kind of, I wouldn't say abandoned by conferences, more they've just kind of bounced around, whether they've been in the Mountain West, they've been independent. Now it'd be Big 12. You've got all these other things going on here. And so they're finally going to have another home in the Big 12, and I think this will be really interesting. But another interesting point I have is I was looking at BYU's buyout, actually, and if the notice is less than 12 months on the Big 12 accepting BYU's buyout to the West Coast Conference, the exit fee, you could say, is only $1 million. And if it was between 12 and 24 months, they would only be paying $500,000. Only 500,000.
And that's really not a lot of money. Like with the way, obviously, with how much money the Big 12 has, that wouldn't really take very much to buy them out very quickly with less than 12 months. But you don't want to pay as much for their buyout. You can wait.
You can. And if they wait 2 full years, then they officially pay nothing.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if the Big 12 will want to wait that long.
Exactly, especially with we have no idea when OU and Texas are going to leave. The 2025 date is the absolute latest. I still think it's going to be 2023 at the latest. I could see it happening next year even.
But it all depends on that. Well, Texas and Oklahoma try to buy out as quickly as possible. I mean, that's a lot of money they're having to spend. Now, for granted, I think obviously Texas will probably use the money that they've been given by ESPN through the Longhorn Network to pay a good portion of that off to help, so they can both universities can pay their buyouts. But it just, who knows what they'll do. Either they'll wait so it'll be less amount to pay, or do they pay it all immediately and try to get out as quick as they can? Because obviously the SEC is like, join when you can, basically at this point.
Exactly. And then the final real thing here I have that stuck out to me in terms of the Big 12 expansion news was the athletic director for Texas Tech, Kirby Hocutt, was asked about, the expansion process and all that. And he said, this may only be the first round in a larger expansion for the Big 12.
So
now, what does that mean?
It either brings into question that, they probably might add a couple of teams, or they'll add another 4 teams to make it 16.
And that kind of raises my question here. If you're the Big 12, you have these 4 that you're planning on adding. The vote is officially tomorrow, I believe, and it is expected to be a done deal. Who would you add after those 4?
That's a good question. Do you go after teams with possible market value, or do you go after big name universities where their states don't necessarily bring much to be desired? Like one of them that has obviously been a possibility, but this was when they were red hot and good at the time, like a media darling, was Boise State.
Exactly.
Boise State itself is a brand of its own. It's a well-known university that is well known for its previous escapades in football. They're not some pushover team as a group of 5, but they're not necessarily the powerhouse they used to be. But they obviously, you want want some name recognition, you can go after them. But the state of Idaho doesn't really have a lot to be desired. I mean, they're really not that much bigger than Wyoming population wise.
Exactly.
And all you have is Boise. That's it.
Well, I mean, you do have Idaho and Idaho State, but I mean, they're both FCS schools.
No, no.
I mean, we can get a return to the glorious Kibbe Dome. I mean, I don't even know if it's called that anymore, but that was always a very fun place to play at NCAA 14. And I mean, the fact that that stadium exists sometimes just boggles the mind, you could say. But my personal favorite would be Memphis. That's a team I really think, if you're the Big 12, if you're going to add another 4, that's who I would go after. That would be my number one target. You have good football history. They're hot right now. You've got the basketball history as well to go with it. You have the city of Memphis itself connecting you into Tennessee. It's a big market. You have all this momentum, in my opinion at least, going for Memphis. I think they should be, talked about at least.
That I wouldn't really disagree with that at all. I mean, Memphis, obviously, like you said, doing well in football right now, and they've been pretty hot the last half decade.
And another one that I've seen thrown around, not as much, this is kind of more of a fringe candidate, but Colorado State. You have the Fort Collins, which is right by Denver. You would open the Denver market back up. Colorado used to take its place. Now you get the Rams in there. I think they could fit as well in that mold as a team.
Yeah, but when you're looking for market value, yeah, that would be a very smart move. But Colorado State doesn't always really bring much in terms of football.
Exactly. They're not the best athletically, but I mean, if we're going pure market value trying to add together here, I think they could be a good fit. Some other teams I've heard, and I'm not really, we're getting kind of more into fringe territory here, is do you add someone from Louisiana? Do you add
probably Lafayette?
Yeah, do you add Louisiana Lafayette? Do you add maybe Louisiana Tech? I mean, that's Shreveport there. Do you add Tulane because of New Orleans and because of academics? It looks good.
Who really knows? It's like there's a lot of possibilities if you're gonna do you already have your 4 teams right now. But it's kind of like a toss-up who these next four, because there are many other areas you can go after.
Exactly. Do you add South Florida maybe even as a partner with UCF? I know UCF fans would not be a big fan of that, but
I mean, the way they were treated when UCF tried to get into the Big East, and with USF saying, no, you're not, we're not going to let you in. Well, why bother? Why would you let your rival in when you can stay one up on them?
Exactly. It's one of those things to me that it's very hard to predict at this point, because these 4 were the kind of 4 we all expected.
Yeah.
After you open up to, if you want to go to 16, it really is just a guessing game at this point.
The floodgates are open. And it just comes down to whether you go after market / also trying to get two birds with one stone with a team, a university that is relatively good in football but also has a market share, or do you just go after markets, or do you just go after brand recognition from teams? One of the teams that I thought kind of thought we could do was Northern Illinois because of the Chicago market, and obviously when Northern Illinois was speculation, was mainly whenever they were when they were actually being one of the better teams in the MAC.
Yeah.
MAC at the time. Like, they were actually in top 25. They had a few years where they were really good, but obviously they haven't really been the same since that run.
Exactly.
But it opens up the Chicago market if you want to, but it's really up to what the Big 12 wants to do. And also up to the other schools that are currently there, because they all have a say.
Exactly. But I think that this expansion talk, I think it's always one of the most fun parts of the off season. The fact that we're getting it during the season is just so much fun.
Yeah.
It adds another level of chaos to, you can have a crazy football season, and then adding this on top of it is just one of those, it's just so fun to talk about. I mean, you can mix and match. There's a website I've been using, collegerealignment.com, where it's literally a map of every FBS and FCS school and you could just kind of mix and match what conferences you want to use. You can do that. You can make everything purely regional. You can say, I don't care, put everyone like a Premier League style top 20. You can do really whatever you want and just kind of see how it would unfold.
It's very that's what makes football interesting.
It really does.
And just obviously football obviously is your biggest moneymaker, so your other sports other sport athletics can be affected because now you got to work around schedules, you got to rejuggle how you originally were doing your non-conferences or even your conference play, because now you got to add teams now, since they're going to be adding 12, with obviously the earliest that they could probably come in is 2023 or 2024. It depends on when OU and Texas leave.
It really does. It all comes down
to do you
to
bring back, how would you set up divisions since you're going back to 12? Since you're still going to keep your title game regardless, where do you either move it out of Arlington, which I don't necessarily think would be a great idea because you already have it right there, or do you move it slightly centralized, or do you just keep it there in Texas?
I would think if you're to bring divisions back, it would be an East and West. I think it absolutely would have to be.
And the idea is figure out, well, what teams are going to be where. Way I see it, I think all the Texas teams, BYU and Oklahoma State, will be in one division while everyone else is with them in the other.
I could see that.
Where you have K-State, Kansas, Iowa State, with Cincinnati, West Virginia, and UCF. Yeah. You have two expansion teams in each group, and you pretty much just keep the rivalries where they are, whatever current rivalries. Technically, Oklahoma State no longer has a real rival because in their conference, with OU leaving, obviously it's speculation. Do they keep Bedlam? Do they keep playing football? In my opinion, because now it no longer affects conference. The only thing it would really affect would be the college playoff.
Well, I mean, if the Big 12 wants to invite Tulsa, I'm sure they'd love to join.
They lost actually, if they were consistently good, like if they were like last year's team and actually consistently good for their group of 5 conference, that I wouldn't mind the consideration. But no, I don't want them in the Big 12. We don't need Tulsa.
But I mean, you get that wonderful Tulsa market that Oklahoma State already captures.
No.
But speaking of Tulsa, that's a game we'll preview later with Tulsa and Oklahoma State coming up this weekend. But there's a little bit more conference realignment I want to talk about. This is not with the Big 12. This is some stuff that already happened. But I think this year, these next few years actually, we're going to see a major shift in conferences. I think this is going to be from FBS. This could be all the way down to Division II, personally, in my opinion.
If it wasn't for the move with OU and Texas, really has changed a lot of things and has made it, and the spotlight is on these other conferences or possibly brand new conferences, depending on what teams want to work together.
Exactly, but it's not just that. It's also the WAC. If you remember the WAC from a decade ago, they are bringing football back. I believe their plan is to eventually get back to the FBS, but they're planning to have FCS football here in a few years, and may even be as soon as next year. It may even be happening right now, and I just don't know it's happening.
Well, I welcome it.
Exactly. You add Abilene Christian, you add Lamar, you add Sam Houston State, who just won the FCS championship this May. You add Stephen F. Austin, known for their basketball runs, and, I mean, they've got football history as well. Tarleton State, who, I mean, they've been a power for a while. The fact they're finally in FCS, they're a D2 power. I mean, there's so many new moves. I mean, Grand Canyon just made their first appearance in the NCAA tournament, I believe, in basketball.
Yeah, they did.
Dixie State, who also joined, they're going to have football. You're going to add Southern Utah next year. Chicago State is going to leave. Everyone's favorite program, Chicago State, with their basketball team that everyone jokes about. I can't remember the guy's name. There's one guy on Twitter who kept trying to campaign to get the Chicago State basketball job. This is going completely off the rails. I apologize. This is the biggest tangent I think I've ever done on this show. But this is just so fun to talk about. I mean, it really is.
It's interesting possibilities, and also figure out, well, how does this work out? it's fun to see these things come together, and actually we'll see how it plays out. Obviously, bringing back the whack, that's classic for me. Especially playing older college football video games. Just the whack, just that brings back a lot of memories. Especially, I remember obviously Boise State used to be a part of that. Hawaii was a part of that. It's just it's very interesting that this conference has been risen back from the dead.
It really is. I mean, just kind of looking at the history of it here, I mean, it's going to be absolutely insane. It really is. Seeing the whack back, which is just such a fun 2 words to say in a row, the whack is back. I mean, this is going to be very fun, but the conference that gets affected by this the most is the Southland. The Southland, you just had 4 members poached from your conference.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're trying to scramble around. You only have 8 teams, and 2 of them do not play football. This is a 6-team football conference.
Mm-hmm.
You're dangerously close to losing your even automatic bid to the FCS playoffs.
Yeah.
And so the rumors I've seen, now these are just rumors. I cannot confirm whether this will happen or will not happen. Just got to give that statement out there. Is they might look to Division II to poach some members. And if they do that, now that I get to load my next page up here on the computer that no one gets to see but Connor and I, the Lone Star Conference. This is a Division II conference. If you're a Northwestern fan, you probably know at least some of these teams. Angelo State, who we played in volleyball recently, West Texas A&M, Dallas Baptist, known for their baseball runs if you follow college baseball.
Yeah, very good baseball team.
Cameron University in Lawton, Oklahoma Christian University in Oklahoma City, Midwestern State, a team we played in soccer recently, Texas A&M Commerce, who had a big run in Division II football a few years ago. A lot of these teams that we kind of know a little bit about, I've heard rumors that the Southland is going to try to poach some of these schools, which would leave the Lone Star Conference with only 3 football members.
That if you're the Lone Star Conference, that's not good.
Yeah.
Because if you only have 3 football three teams that still play football, your conference basically dead.
Yes.
Either that only remains as a non-football conference, or it disbands altogether, and these teams have to go look for other conferences to join, and it's really that's going to be really hard for them to figure out what to do if that happens.
Exactly. And I mean, I've also seen some people who went to UCO, the University of Central Oklahoma here in Edmond. I've seen some people like, hey, maybe we should jump up and go to the FCS level. I honestly don't know what's going to happen. Nothing may happen at all. I really have zero idea. But like I said earlier, it's just fun to think. It really is. It's a good brain exercise for something that most people probably think is pointless, but
I mean, it brings a lot of interesting concepts and possibilities that could happen. But there's obviously certain universities obviously will need to know their limits. Do they want to take that jump, or do they not? Well, knows I really don't know. It's just a lot to talk about.
It really is. I mean, this is why I kind of enjoy stuff like this, when you get an absolute rush of news coming in and it's like, okay, what is going to happen here today? Oh, we're doing expansion talk again. We all thought this was over in August, but no, it's back for round 2, maybe even around 3 and 4. Who knows? I mean, I hate to keep repeating myself here, but I mean, that's really all you can say is who knows.
Yeah, really, that's all it is. It's just we'll have to wait. We'll have to sit down and wait and see what happens next after, obviously, with all of these confirmations that obviously with these 4 new teams with the Big 12, we'll have to see what happens with Division II, FCS, or possibly even more moves in the FBS, if that even happens.
Exactly.
All those, we'll just have to wait and see.
Exactly. I mean, this kind of comes with my dream personally, and I've talked to you about this in person in other times. If this were to all happen if all of these moves that I just mentioned were all happening, the Lone Star Conference then has to either try to cannibalize someone else or get destroyed, basically, in terms of football. If I'm the GAC, personally, the Great American Conference, I enjoy calling it the GAC. It sounds a lot more fun that way.
The GAC.
Exactly. You can get some late-night gaction. And so, if I'm them, I'm looking at, hey, we have Cameron and Oklahoma Christian. That's already in our backyard. Why don't we just swallow them up? Yes, they would be basketball-only members, and that would be a little odd. But, I mean, you add Lawton, which, I mean, is an easier trip for Southwestern and Southeastern and East Central. And then you add Oklahoma Christian, add another Oklahoma City school to further corner off that market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I personally would look into it. Now, obviously, I'm not in charge. Nowhere near in charge of any of this. So, this will probably not happen.
Less likely. I mean, Cameron, not much of a desirable university in some aspects. And it's really hard to say what the GAC what any of these Division II conferences will do with the Lone Star blowing up. Potentially, yeah. Depends on what.
That's just kind of some rumors I've heard, and also just kind of looking at the speculation of that is usually what happens when one conference gets robbed, they then steal from another.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of work your way all the way down the chain until you get to the bottom.
It pretty much is just whoever's left. You basically cannibalize the rest of the conference to nab those teams.
Exactly.
But
I mean, I personally one day would like to see a return of the OIC where all the Oklahoma schools are in the same conference. I don't think it'll happen because Central Oklahoma, Northeastern, and Rogers State are in a very good position in the MIAA. They really are. But I would absolutely love to see it happen.
I think it would just work out better for travel sakes. But
exactly.
Obviously, when you have some schools that are like middle of the pack to the bottom half of their conference, why just jump to remake a conference where you can become the top dog?
Exactly.
Then immediately.
Then you would basically every year you would be guaranteeing an Oklahoma team in all the playoffs. Meaning, if they're really good, maybe get some revenue from that to help your university or something like help your athletic programs or something.
But I don't think that will happen, but I would like that very much.
I would too. I know some people who don't like making these 8-hour drives to Arkansas would probably enjoy it a lot.
Oh, most definitely.
But while that is all uncertain and speculation, what I am certain about is we are going to have a top 10 matchup this weekend in a game, in a series that has never had a top 25 matchup ever. They get a top 10 matchup for their first time ever. I'm, of course, speaking about the Cyhawk game, Iowa at Iowa State. I think this is going to be the most fun game of the week.
Oh, I would wholeheartedly agree on that because you have with Iowa coming off the big win against Indiana, where they just destroyed that Indiana offense. That defense was fantastic, and that Iowa offense didn't really have to do as much to win that game. And Iowa State, obviously, I know they usually have that one weird game, but I think they're going to be better. They're going to play a lot better. They're going to play up to competition and actually show, hey, we can play with the big boys. That Northern Iowa game, that was a fluke.
Yeah, well, I think it's also if you're an Iowa State fan, you're saying, look, that's a regional rivalry. That's kind of like if Tulsa was to nearly beat Oklahoma State and Oklahoma State still be a top 15-10 team.
Yeah.
Where it's one of those, look, those games just happen.
Yeah.
They were very motivated for that game, and for us, that's just another game.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, if you're Iowa, you've got to be thinking, oh, man, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
They only scored 16 points on Northern Iowa. Let's see what this defense can do.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Petras at quarterback for the Hawkeyes. If you can, I think one of the keys to this game is if you can easily just start establishing the run, make him not have to throw the ball because he goes 13 for 27, 146 yards against Indiana. For all this talk I'd been hearing about improvement and all of this,
yeah,
I mean, now granted, Indiana is a good team still. I
Yeah.
really think they are.
They just
That's still not the best,
No.
even for a Big Ten game where you don't need to throw the ball that much.
Yeah. It just Indiana didn't. Obviously, that offense didn't really come out to get together. They weren't on pace. They just kind of got thrown off. Iowa just playing really well, but if there's any form of if you can make any form of improvement at your quarterback position, Hawkeyes could be the team to. Obviously, they have a straight shot to probably win their division and take on Ohio State, but you still got to get past. You gotta. This is one of your first a really big test against your little brother.
And for Iowa State, the mindset is obviously going to be, look at this. We got a shot to knock down a top 10 team at home on ABC with College Game Day there. The eyes of the country will be on Ames, Iowa at 3:30. And I mean, who better to beat to get this year started than your arch rival?
Oh, most definitely. This is just, I'm so excited for this game. I've never been this excited for a Iowa State game before, but I'm very happy. I want to see how Iowa and Iowa State are as top 10 teams, show us what they're really made of.
Exactly. And I think another thing that needs to be factored into this has what I'd call the true rivalry factor, which is one team can be very good and one team can be very bad, but it would not matter and you would not be able to tell the difference.
Oh, yeah.
If you see this in big rivalry games all the time. You've seen it in the Iron Bowl, you see it in Army Navy, you see it in OU Texas, you see it in Michigan Ohio State sometimes, not as much now, but you used to be able to see it a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
It has that true rivalry factor where it's unpredictable.
Very.
You can tell some years when a team is a lot better than the other, but most rivalry games, it's hidden. You cannot figure that out for your life.
Well, it's like on paper going into a game, it's like, oh yeah, this team they'll just roll over their rival, and yet their rival is like giving them a game of a lifetime.
Exactly. And I think this will be another edition of that. I would not be surprised if this is a low-scoring defensive battle, maybe first to 20 wins in a type of game like this.
One of those games. I know we kind of somewhat expected that with Iowa and Indiana last week. Obviously, with both of us thinking that, Indiana might eventually pull away, but I still think that this one, it's just really hard to say because obviously I know Iowa State had that little weird game, but Northern Iowa has also given Iowa through the years problems.
Yes, they absolutely have.
So it's not like one of these things where Iowa State just was actually worse than what we think they are. It's like Northern Iowa has been that team, that one FCS team in Iowa that just gives both those programs some issues.
Yes, and I think that's kind of another rivalry factor type game. Northern Iowa versus Iowa State or Iowa. They do it to both of them. They've gotten very close to beating both of them. I think in 2019, Iowa State and Northern Iowa went to triple overtime, I want to say.
Yeah.
And then in 2009, Iowa had to barely survive and get a few special teams plays to go their way to beat Northern Iowa. I'm sure they have a bunch of games against the Panthers that they want to forget very badly.
But yeah, this is just one of those exciting matchups that I can't wait to just sit down on Saturday and just watch them go at it.
This will be a game. I think this game really will have everything. You'll see great offense. You'll see great defense. You'll probably see some good punts in there. It is a Big Ten team after all.
Yeah, that's true.
This is a Big 12 matchup. You'll see some defense in this. People like to say the Big 12 doesn't play defense, but Iowa State is one of those teams that consistently has when they've had the talent to do it.
Yeah.
Especially under Matt Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
But the over-under for this game is 46, so Vegas is not expecting a lot of points either. And I would still take the under on this personally. But a spread, Iowa State's a 4.5-point favorite at home. 61,500 folks is the capacity of Jack Trice Stadium. I wouldn't be surprised if there's 65,000 here for this game.
They're going to find ways to for more people to get in there.
They're going to absolutely have to. If not, they're just all going to tailgate in the parking lot, and maybe the entire state of Iowa will be there. I don't know.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if the entire state of Iowa is there or at either of those stadiums whenever they're played.
Exactly.
It's a big matchup. I know Iowa has won a lot more of these games than Iowa State has, but it's still a game to watch. They've always had close matchups.
Exactly. Now, the next game we're going to get to here, not to dwell on the Cyhawk battle for too long, another really good game I think we could see, 11 a.m., big noon kickoff on Fox. Number 12 Oregon comes to the Horseshoe to take on the third-ranked Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh, man. It's really I'm not. Who knows how Oregon will bounce back after almost losing to Fresno State? Luckily, they got past Fresno State by scoring two touchdowns to go from being down 24-17 to get up 31-24.
Yeah, this Oregon team still has a lot of question marks to me. Can you actually compete with a big name team? And more importantly, can you beat a big name team? Because this is something I mentioned, I believe, on our show with Andrew, or my show with Andrew, not our show. But I think if Oregon loses this game, I think the Pac-12 really is in trouble when it comes to the college football playoff race. And I hate to be talking about that in September, but I mean, that's just kind of how big the implication is for the Pac-12 in this game.
I mean, I don't like, for me, just obviously as a college football fan, I don't take the Pac-12 that seriously as a contender since the last team, Washington. They haven't been none of their team. It's like they always either they beat themselves up enough where they can't get a title contender there, or even their best team is like, you're really not that great.
Yeah, I mean, the Pac-12 champ last year was Oregon, but they were only number 25 in the country and just kind of waltzing into the Fiesta Bowl to get beaten up by Iowa State.
Yeah, it's one of these things the Pac-12 has got to prove. It needs to. I know UCLA beat LSU and did it very convincingly, and UCLA has looked very good. But even it's like they still need to get through their schedule before we can really look at them like, hey, they might have a shot. Or really, it really just depends on how they are. But if Oregon cannot beat Ohio State, the Pac-12 is pretty much almost done at this point.
I mean,
or it might seal the deal.
And I hate to kind of give my pick away early here on this one, but I mean, when you look at all the weapons Ohio State has, C.J. Stroud looked great against Minnesota. For a kid that has not started at Ohio State yet, making his first start, he looked absolutely phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
And with all the weapons Ohio State has, even Chris Olave at receiver, which is actually, I read a fun story about, he actually grew up as an Oregon fan. He actually rooted for Oregon over Ohio State in the national title game. But now here he is as a Buckeye playing against the team he grew up loving in the Ducks. So I think that's kind of a neat little storyline.
It's pretty interesting.
It is.
We'll get to what we think with Oregon and Ohio State. I still think Oregon is a lot better than what they played against Fresno State, but we'll see how that one turns out. We'll come back to this one.
Exactly. Now another kind of interesting game is number 5 Texas A&M takes a trip to Denver to take on Colorado. Not Boulder, but Denver. At the home of the Broncos.
Playing at it, it's still technically a home game for Buffalo, but it's still on a neutral site because it's not in Boulder, but the Aggies are still having to travel to Colorado. So I expect quite a bit of the ones from Colorado to obviously be there in the stadium to root for the Buffaloes, but I expect Aggie fans to come out and also kind of help support their team.
Oh, I absolutely expect to see a lot of maroon there for that game.
Yeah.
A&M fans usually travel very well, so I would not be surprised to see them maybe even overtake the stadium.
They could, man, and obviously Buffalo has had a few off years ever since has had some years in the Pac-12 where they've been good at football, but they've just never been that team to really get over the hump in really any aspect. They've been ranked before, but it's really hit and miss whether if they're going to be either kind of really down or they're middle of the pack.
And this is kind of an interesting matchup because it's the first time since 2009 these two have played, back when they were Big 12 members.
It brings, it's for anyone who obviously is big on, remembers obviously the original Big 12. This brings back some memories. Colorado through those years, their original run with the Big 12, they have been every now and then been pretty good in football. A&M obviously kind of being there as a team, like, hey, we'll just try to upset you every now and then.
Yeah, I remember both A&M in the early 90s and Colorado in the early 2000s. I mean, they just had some absolutely good teams that always were competitive in the Big 12. And then both kind of tapered off for a while.
Yeah.
And then Texas A&M kind of found their stride as they were leaving the Big 12. But Colorado absolutely did not find their stride. They were kind of on a downhill trajectory. They had that 2016 year where they were very good.
Yeah, and they've kind of been middle of the pack ever since. They haven't been absolutely terrible. Actually, they haven't been one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. They've kind of been there. They're kind of like middle.
Exactly.
But who really know? Like, obviously, we're in some aspects we're kind of giving away who we think will win this. But I expect Colorado to try put up some fight.
I think so. I think this will kind of be like the Nebraska game a few years ago out there, where, hey, even though Nebraska obviously not on the same caliber as Texas A&M is this year,
not even close.
I think Colorado will come out, hey, this is a big name game. We're going to get up for this. This is going to be an absolute fun game.
I know Aggies are favored by 17, but we'll see how that will be. We'll come back to that game.
Now, next one I have up here on the docket is a Stanford comes to the Coliseum to play USC, ranked number 14 in the country, are the Trojans. And this is another one of those kind of unpredictable games.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I've seen a lot of people taking the Trojans, and, oh, this isn't going to be that good of a game, but you never can sleep on Stanford. You never can sleep on a David Shaw coach team.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, since it's a Pac-12 game, you really expect some unexpected things to happen, especially being a
9:30 Central Time kickoff.
Yeah,
we're gonna get into Pac-12 after dark territory once again, and as you all know, anything can happen once the sun sets on the West Coast.
Which is why I wouldn't be surprised if Stanford gives USC some trouble.
Oh, I wouldn't be surprised either.
But obviously, prediction on how we think that game will go, we'll come back to that. But obviously, USC favored by 17. I still think that I don't necessarily agree with that margin because USC still needs to show how they really can play against a conference opponent, and I think Stanford just had a lot of unlucky things happen to them when they played Kansas State.
I think so too. I think Stanford is still going to be a very solid football team. They're kind of like the Kansas State of the Pac-12 to me.
They feel like they are.
In that they're always going to be there. Some years they're going to be a lot better than others, but they're always going to be 7-5, 8-4, 6-6, 9-3 in the regular season. They're always going to be a threat, and you're always going to have to worry about them.
Yeah, they're that team you got to watch over your shoulder for.
Exactly. Now, another game that I'm super excited for, an old Southwest Conference showdown. Number 15 Texas, who looked very good in their opener last week, travels to Arkansas to take on the Razorbacks, and there will be no love lost in this game.
Everything I've heard, Arkansas, the old Southwest Conference fans are like, we're ready for you.
Arkansas fans, I've heard talk about this game for a while, that they have been ready for this one. I've heard that 80,000 people are expected in Fayetteville for this game. They just upgraded the stadium this year, and they're going to break it in an app. I mean, they broke it in against Rice technically last week, but they're going to break it in even further this week.
Oh, yeah, I expect...
this will be a very rowdy atmosphere. Texas is only a 7-point favorite. I think that's kind of fair.
I expect Fayetteville to be rocking that night, ready for the Longhorns.
Oh, I think so, too. I think this is another game that I really don't know how to feel about this one. I mean, I think Texas is the better team than Arkansas.
Like talent wise,
yes.
they should be, but it's obviously the execution of that talent is what matters. I mean, you can have like this is one thing. Like I know this is kind of getting away from this game, but Oklahoma State through the years has worked with less star talent and has made them stars. Like Blackman wasn't really a he wasn't a 5-star 4-star player. He was a 3-star wide receiver, and he ended up being one of the best receivers in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
But during his time in college,
exactly.
But way I see it, I'm like, Arkansas will put up a good fight with Texas, and I expect this one to be like a good football game, unless it just somehow gets one-sided.
Exactly. I think another kind of interesting storyline here. This is Hudson Card's first start for Texas on the road. So he gets to go into a not very fun environment for your first game.
No, this is one. It's usually if you're going to go on the road, especially for your first start, you typically would want to work with a less hostile environment.
Yeah.
But you became the starter for Texas. You have something to prove. Go win it in a hostile environment and get a W for your team.
I was going to say, not really for your conference, since we're going to see this matchup a lot more once Texas joins the SEC.
I know I got my words conflicted, but you know what I meant.
Oh, I absolutely do. I'm just giving you a little bit of a hard time. Now, another fun rivalry game. This is another classic that I always watch every year because the rivalry factor's there for this one. It's Utah and BYU. The Utes are ranked 21 in the country. BYU is not ranked, but I feel like they're a team that they're going to be in the mix for a ranking.
They're going to be in mix for a ranking as long as because the schedule they have, it's actually they play some pretty good. They play some talented teams. Like they made sure this year they're playing like 7 quality opponents relatively for them because since they're an independent, they obviously can play whatever team they want in football. But I expect this one to be one of those games because I actually started watching this game a couple years ago, and it's just really fun to watch because these two teams will go at it.
I mean, there are 2 games I think about, and both of them I believe happened in Salt Lake City, where Utah was hosting. That there are 2 of these games that I think about a lot when these two get together. I think of one where they had it felt like 8 targeting penalties called in one game, where it was a very hard-hitting game. I mean, unfortunately, you're clocking guys in the head. You can't really do that anymore. And the other game I think about was, I want to say almost a decade ago, where Utah's crowd stormed the field 3 different times because BYU's kicker missed a field goal. The fans rushed the field while the ball was still in the air because they already knew he missed it. And then I believe the next kick gets blocked, and the fans storm the field while the ball is still in play again. So now BYU has gone from a 54-yarder for the win to like a 28-yarder, and he doinks it off the upright, and Utah finally got to storm the field for a 3rd time with a win. And it was a very incredible ending to that game. I don't think that will happen again, especially in Provo this time. I definitely don't think they would rush the field while BYU's kicking a field goal.
But this is going to be a fun matchup to watch, especially since these two are big rivals with each other. And it's the Battle of Utah.
Let me just say, it's called the Holy War for a reason, folks. It really is a war out there when these two go. I mean, it is always a hard-hitting, physical matchup.
That's what rivalries are for.
And, I mean, a 9:15 Central Time kickoff on ESPN. I mean, Pac-12 After Dark's going to be in effect. I mean, Utah's there, so.
That's one thing I wish these teams could play probably up an hour earlier, but.
I wish these teams could just play 12 times a year. I honestly wish we could just do that. If we could do 12 of these games every year, I mean, Utah and BYU would be must-see TV every week.
Yeah, but sadly, obviously, these two don't get as much recognition as I think they should.
Exactly.
But this is once again, this is going to be a fun matchup to watch. I mean, the who's the favorite in this one?
I believe Utah. Yes,
Utah
Utah's the 7-point favorite.
I think this game's going to obviously. I don't know. 7 points is a very reasonable, obviously favor, but I would say this game's going to be a lot closer.
Exactly. And a kind of interesting fact for Big 12 fans is Utah's starting quarterback is Charlie Brewer, who was the quarterback at Baylor. So that's a man who knows how to take a hit or two.
Yeah. Oh man.
And so I think this is easily in my top 3 games to watch this weekend. I'll get to that in a moment. But another game, kind of switching to in-state here, and then we can talk about the other in-state team since we're knocking 2 out of 3 right now. Tulsa and Oklahoma State, the Turnpike Classic, the official name for the rivalry. I still don't know why that's the name for the rivalry.
I don't get that either.
I don't understand trying to give this rivalry a name. I'm sorry.
It's not. It's really not even much. They're that third little brother that's just like, why are you here?
Yeah, it's like you got
It's
OU and then you got OSU and then Tulsa's just kind of in the room with them. And Oral Roberts is like off in a corner somewhere, like doing a sermon or something.
They're like they're like that weird cousin that we forget that's
they're
there
the
at
one
times.
always asking you to go to church with them because they care, and they do care.
And OSU's favored by 13 to win this game, but
Spencer Sanders will also be back.
I will say with him being back, I think you add better experience. I know Illingworth played a few games last year. He did play against Tulsa when Spencer went down and then had to come in the second half after Bullock just wasn't able to do anything, got killed a lot of the time. But I think Spencer will add a different dynamic to the game. I think obviously out of the two with Illingworth and Spencer, Illingworth is a better passer, but I think Spencer has a bit more to his game with obviously his running ability. He can keep you guessing. Is he going to actually run the football or is he going to just throw the ball? But you have OSU offensively has a lot of, when it comes to skill positions, obviously running back is a very, we're not really sure what happened last week, why they just were not playing well. Obviously the offensive line was not playing up to standards, but I think the team will bounce back. Defense will be as aggressive as always. They'll probably keep Tulsa from really doing much on offense. OSU will come out swinging on offense and jump on them, and I think we'll do quite a bit. But obviously Tulsa had that game against UC Davis, which is like you lost to an FCS team, but obviously we realize they're not as good as they used to be.
Here's another thing that a lot of people forgot. Everyone wants to make fun of Tulsa for losing to UC Davis, and that is understandable. But they had 13 players suspended. If you remember, Tulsa had a brawl with Mississippi State in their bowl game last year.
Yeah, that's right.
And they suspended 13 players for the season opener. Plus, they had, I think, 3 or 4 guys out for COVID reasons. So they're going to be bringing over 15 players back this week. We'll see Tulsa in full force. We'll see Oklahoma State in full force. And we might even see Oklahoma in full force. They take on Western Carolina this week. This is a game about 8 people are going to watch. I'm going to be one of them. It's the classic.
He's a fool for buying the pay-per-view.
I mean, usually I'm there for that game, but I can't teleport 3.5 hours to Norman. So
no, you gotta just use your brain powers.
No, I can't. My brain's not that.
Unlock your third eye.
My brain's not that advanced.
Unlock your third eye.
But I mean, it'll be fun for me as an OU fan, just kind of getting to see like the depth and all that of the team. See some guys. Maybe we'll run the ball more than 15 times this weekend.
I'm pretty much just going to get my predict. Obviously, it's not really. It's going to be a foregone conclusion for the most, pretty much. But just to get out of the way, I expect OU to kill them. Actually, not do what they did against Tulane. Well, they shouldn't.
If they do what they did against Tulane in this game, and if at any point this is a one-possession game,
I expect you guys are going to get dropped out of the top 10 if you do that.
I was going to say we're going to have a very interesting show Monday with Andrew and I, but that too.
But I expect OU to just kill them, beat them by like 40 or whatever, maybe more than that. Rattler throws like 3 bombs very quickly, doesn't have to do much after that, and then he's off the field.
But I'm waiting for one specific thing that I know is going to happen. Is Caleb Williams, backup quarterback for Oklahoma. We saw him against Tulane for a play or two. He's going to come in probably when we're up like 42-7 or something in the third quarter. He's going to make one amazing throw, and then he's going to look good for the rest of the game. And then we're going to have to deal with people who seriously suggest that Caleb Williams should start over Spencer Rattler right now, and that Rattler should be benched forever. And it's like, no, you got to give Rattler a chance. I mean, I understand his bad game was going 30 for 39. And a lot of OU fans are like, this is not a good game. Now, obviously, there were some mechanic things. He threw off his back foot a lot. There's a lot of stuff. I want to see that cleaned up, obviously, in this game. But there were already people, like, clamoring for Williams to come in and be the quarterback. I was like, just, can we cool it for a few weeks? If we do this against Nebraska and West Virginia, you have a point. But I don't see that happen.
Well, first of all, yes, they didn't really do. And go back to that Tulane game. Yes, he didn't really do much, but he still completed. He completed 30 out of 39. That is a fantastic stat. I mean, I would be happy if Oklahoma State does that all the time. If they were able to do that all the time, that's fine. But obviously, you still have his issue with throwing a couple of interceptions. I'm like, stuff happens. I mean, he made a lot of. Well, it was just a mistake. I know Tulane made a great interception on that second one.
Yeah.
But it's like Tulane, and also he can't play defense. So it's like if the defense just does not really do anything, how's that going to be the offense's fault if the defense just gives up points after points? I understand your offense, you need to score, but it's a two-way game. Defense, if your defense isn't doing much, your offense can't really help you out if they can't do one or two drives where they can't really do anything.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I want to see. I want to see how the defense looks for OU this week as well. I'm expecting the kind of challenge from Grinch this week for his players. Let's get a shutout. We beat Missouri State last year. We shut them out. They ended up being a better team than we thought they were. Let's see if we can do it to Western Carolina. Get some momentum. Get something positive after giving up 35 to Tulane. I know a lot of people are going to look at that and be like, wow, you shut out an FCS team. Good job. But, I mean, something like that can go a long way.
Yeah, it obviously will up your spirits of your team, saying, oh, yeah, we kicked your butt. We kicked some butt. Let's go out and do that next week or whenever you guys play your third game.
Exactly.
But I fully expect OU to just beat them pretty good. I would not be surprised if they shut them out. I mean, defense get those backups step up and make sure it happens.
Exactly.
But once again, it comes down to the whole team needs to be on the same page. Offense cannot make mistakes in any aspect of the game, and defense just does their thing. I mean, you're playing Western Carolina. You should beat them.
Exactly. And I know Western Carolina's had a very rough time, so I hope everything's going well for the Catamounts.
Yeah.
They've had 2 assistant coaches die this offseason and during the regular season here, so I absolutely hate to hear that.
Yeah. So
sorry to bring this to a somber note, but speaking about defense, I want to bring up one game real quick that might have a lot of defense. Cal plays TCU this week, and if you remember the Cheez-It Bowl from a few years ago, where it felt like every other play was a turnover or something terrible happening for either team, that might be unironically the game. If that happens again, that will be the game of the week, regardless of how good these other games are that we talked about. Keep an eye on that one. Just don't watch it because you might burn your eyes out if it's a repeat of the Cheez-It Bowl. But just keep that one on your phone for a moment. Just think about that game. And just think about where you were when TCU and Cal had 9 combined turnovers. Because I know where I was. I was yelling at the TV, wondering why they kept, like, it was in that
What
game,
is going on?
I mean, that game, too, it wasn't even like, it wasn't like the defense made good plays. It's the quarterback throws a ball into triple coverage that should have never been thrown. And the running back forgets how to hold on to the football for 5 seconds, and the ball slips out of his hands. It was some ugly, ugly football, but I loved every second of it. I don't think that will happen this time.
It shouldn't.
I mean, if it does, great. If it doesn't, also great if you're a Cal or TCU fan.
It means you don't have to see your offenses be incompetent.
It means you don't have to have 4 hours of suffering this Saturday.
Just start yelling at the TV.
Yeah,
I want to
well,
punch it.
yeah, well, don't. I do not recommend punching your TV. Then you can't see the game if your team wins. But if your team loses, it might be a good option if they have 8 turnovers or something.
uh,
But prediction wise here, not counting that Cal TCU game because that game's so unpredictable. I don't want to make a prediction on that one.
I'll make my prediction on it. TCU just pulls something out and just wins.
Yeah.
I know I'm not giving much on that, but just like because
Yeah.
it's so unpredictable, I'm just like I'll just pick a team.
Mm-hmm. I just hope the guy I know on the TCU team has a good game. That's gonna be my prediction for it. I hope he gets another touchdown. But Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma will roll. Fingers crossed, no injuries, nothing bad happens. Please, if we lose a running back, we really are going to be in a bind with the whole 2 scholarship running backs. I want to see Riley get some walk-ons or get someone converted to third running back because
I mean that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to convert a wide receiver, possibly a defensive player to like, hey, can you just be able to hang on to the football and run?
exactly because we as an OU fan, we looked scared to run the ball against Tulane. And we cannot do that against a Nebraska or a K-State or a West Virginia because in about 1.5 quarters, they'll figure out, okay, they're going to throw every down.
So we'll just play pass coverage.
Exactly. We'll make you run the ball. We know Rattler's not the most mobile guy in the world. Make him run the ball. It will not work out well at all.
Because you will also, if you make that happen, you risk Rattler getting his lights knocked out.
Exactly.
Whether it be an illegal hit or accidentally get injured.
Exactly.
And you don't want that for your. I mean, since he's easily like I know OU fans are going back and forth with the backup and Rattler. Rattler is the better player easily. He's still your best quarterback
right now. Yeah, in just terms of experience alone.
Well, and he's still like he threw 30 for 39 last week. So it's like
yes.
That's still great
unless
numbers.
Kelly Williams came in and threw like 40 for 40 or something ridiculous.
He has to. I think he'd have to play perfect.
Yeah, he would have to play a perfect game, which I don't know. He might be capable of that. I've heard great things about him, but I just don't know why OU fans are having that argument. It's literally week 1.
I mean,
we literally just did week 1.
I mean, Oklahoma State fans are still having the argument with Spencer Sanders and Illingworth. They both have pros and cons about them, but obviously OSU's thing is, can the run game work? Because if you had a run game, Illingworth could have had an easier time with Missouri State.
Yeah.
But with the running game not working, you had to throw more than he wanted.
Exactly. And Illingworth, looking at stats here, went 22 for 40.
So if Spencer adds that, can help with that running dynamic where it not opens up not just for the running backs, but also for him to throw the football, you might think things could happen. But obviously, Spencer can have my issue with him is that do you just not turn the ball over?
Exactly.
Lower your interception to touchdown ratio. That was the thing that was so irritating with him because I remember the Texas game. If you take away his turnovers that were because of him, they easily win that game. Texas because we gave them that game because he threw a few interceptions, then he fumbled the football on an exchange and some of them led to either field goals or touchdown. But if he can fix that, if that problem is fixed, Spencer will have a good time. But you got to hope his offensive line can block for him.
Exactly. That's the thing I even talked about with Andrew on Monday. Oklahoma State only had 54 rushing yards against Missouri State. It was 1.9 yards per carry, to be specific. You absolutely have to improve that because Tulsa, if they know you're going to throw the ball every down,
they'll just be ready for the throw.
They'll just be ready for the throw. They might get a few turnovers, especially with Sanders back. We don't know if he's still going to be turnover prone or not.
If he can avoid unnecessary necessary throws, I think Oklahoma State will have a much better time. I think they'll. I'm not going to pretend that they'll just kill Tulsa because now Tulsa has some of their players back from that brawl that they had with Mississippi State.
Yep.
And I still think Oklahoma State wins this game by probably 14 or 16, give or take on that one. I think both teams will score quite a bit. Well, it really just depends on how the offense is for Tulsa, because obviously you had UC Davis. That game they played, they did not look good at all. So
Yeah, well, that was kind of a pride point for Tulsa last year's. They didn't have to score a lot. They could just beat you with their defense.
But you lost your best player, your best defensive player.
Exactly, which I think it's going to be a lot rougher for the Golden Hurricane this year.
I still think Oklahoma State pulls out a victory. I think the offense gets better. I think the run game opens up a bit more with Sanders in some aspects. I mean, whether you think Sanders should be the starter or not, that's up to you. We can agree to disagree on certain aspects of his game. I still think he's the better quarterback between him and Illingworth, mainly because he can, if he has to run, he'll run it, and I think he can make plays when he needs to. The only issue with him is consistency.
Exactly.
If he's consistently good, hopefully for me in the more positive aspect, then OSU should have a much better time against Tulsa and maybe if in future opponents.
Exactly.
But that's it for my one. I know I rambled on too long, but obviously they're my team, so I'm gonna.
Don't worry. You get to hear me talk all about OU Nebraska next week and be like, here's a year-by-year history of everything that happened.
I will try to keep you from overtaking that.
You'll get to hear me rant about if this didn't happen in 1970-something, you'd have 8 national
You weren't
titles,
alive then, so can you please tone it down?
But I can watch it on YouTube and be frustrated, like my dad probably was when he watched it when he was my age.
But we'll get to that game.
Yeah, well,
next. We'll save that. We'll save
that bit for next week.
We'll save the rant for next week.
Exactly.
So
but getting started with predictions here. Let's just start with Tulsa, Oklahoma State. We've been talking about it. And you said Oklahoma State by double digits. Yep. I think this game will be close just because Tulsa having some guys back is going to keep it competitive. This is going to be one of those games, I think, where people are going to tune in the fourth quarter and see, what do we have going on here? It's Tulsa's the ball, and it's a one-possession game. And then you're going to watch Tulsa go 3 and out or something like that. Oklahoma State will get just enough to get by, and then Tulsa might, throw an interception or fumble the ball, trying to get away late, and OSU turns this one into a double-digit, maybe even 17, 20-point win at the end.
Something like that. Maybe.
I think that's what's going to happen.
I wouldn't be surprised by that, but I think Oklahoma State bounces back and actually plays how they can play.
I think
their defense will give Tulsa fits.
Yeah,
that especially with their line with Rodriguez and their few other guys that returned from the prior year. I know Trace Ford went down with an injury,
and you won't have Trey Sterling for the first half due to targeting penalty.
So, but we won't have Ford back for the rest of the season. Sterling will eventually come back, but I think guys will step up and give Tulsa all kinds of problems for most of that game. That's why I still think and I think offense will have enough in the tank to actually separate themselves.
Exactly. I would hope you guys would be able to score more than 23 points this week.
I hope to God we do.
Because if every game turns into 1st to 17 wins with Oklahoma State in the Big 12, that would be about one quarter.
It won't last if the offense can't score.
Exactly. Now moving on here, Utah BYU. We already talked about
this one. I'm very once again. I know me and you talked about it, but I'm very excited for this matchup.
Yes, and Utah's 7-point favorite, got an over/under of 49. So, I mean, Vegas is saying Utah 28-21. That's their, if you can kind of do the math on that, that's kind of the score they're giving for this one. I think personally, I'm calling upset alert on this one. I'm taking BYU at home.
Yeah, I'm also taking BYU upset because I think people are a bit kind of like not really looking at BYU. I know they think last year was a fluke season that they had. So I'm not saying they're going to go like double-digit wins through the whole year, but I think they're a lot better than what people think they are. I believe they'll probably beat Utah in a very close one.
Oh yeah, this will definitely.
And I expect some very nasty hits.
I expect this to be a typical Utah BYU game. It's going to be hard hitting. There's going to be a lot of physicality. There may even be a few guys get ejected for either targeting or just starting a fight for no reason. It always feels like one of the two happens when these two play.
Yep.
But I think at the end of the day, BYU at home in Provo with the crowd behind them, I think they'll get it done. Speaking of rivalry games, next one up picking
A re-
Texas at Arkansas.
a revived one.
Yeah, bringing this one back. This will become a lot more common as the years go on here. But I think this will be a really interesting game.
It's very interesting because we're obviously you have you're obviously new coaching staff, well mostly head coach position. You got pretty much new quarterback, new a lot of other aspects. It's really interesting to see how Texas will be and going into Fayetteville in a very very hostile environment where a lot of Razorback fans hate your guts
Yeah,
very much.
a lot
So
of them is still not fully recovered from the Southwest Conference era.
I think a lot of teams really never recovered from that.
Yeah, but Arkansas definitely will put up a fight. I think this will be kind of another one. This will be close. This will be fun.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, too much Bijan Robinson. Texas is going to pull this one away, I think.
I mean, I expect obviously Arkansas put up a good, very good fight against Texas, but I think Texas pulls one out and wins by 7 on the road in a hostile environment and obviously we're going to keep hearing the Texas is back, but I still think Texas pulls out a victory, goes 2-0, and shows that hey, we're going to be a title contender.
Exactly. Next one we got up here, Stanford at USC.
Pac-12 after dark.
Pac-12 after dark. I'm actually going to give a little bit of congrats. Congrats to Fox for airing a 9:30 game. Actually airing a primetime and late night football game
Mm-hmm.
is actually very fun to see. They don't do it a lot because baseball and things like that. We're going to get close to baseball postseason in a little bit.
Yeah, that's going to be when we get into October, you're not going to see as much much of that on Fox especially when you get to the championship series games.
Exactly. But I think this will be one of those weird ones where Stanford looks good until they don't, and then Keaton Slovis, USC, they've got just such a good attack. I think Trojans get this one at home.
I think in some aspects Stanford will expose the Trojans in some aspects. I mean, I know they got a solid victory over San Jose, but that was San Jose. I think USC is not as great as some people think they are. I don't know why they're even still ranked as high as they are, but I think Stanford gives them a lot of trouble and a good portion of the game. But I agree, USC pulls one out and beats them.
Yeah. Moving on to Texas A&M and Colorado here. I think this one I really do not have a lot of faith in Colorado. I know I was talking about how I think they'll be excited for this game and everything and come out swinging, but I think it's not going to matter.
I think Colorado maybe gives them trouble for maybe that first quarter, and then I think A&M just runs away with it.
Yeah, I think Texas A&M they'll take over.
A&M is just obviously this is really A&M's first real opponent per se.
Yeah.
But A&M I think just blast them by over 20 points.
Yeah, I think this will be a blowout. This will look good on A&M's resume to be able to blow out a team like Colorado. But I mean,
yeah,
if you're A&M, you're just waiting for that one specific team from Tuscaloosa. That's got to be a game you're in the back of your mind. You look at this week, but in the back of your mind, you're waiting for the Alabama game.
I think their minds are so focusedly on getting past Alabama, but obviously we'll wait until that game gets there before we'll
that's still a ways away.
But I think A&M rolls over Colorado. Colorado might put up some form of fight in the first quarter, but I think A&M will roll them very quickly, and this game will be pretty much over by the end of the third.
And then Oregon and Ohio State. This is one that I really want to think Oregon will be competitive, but at the same time, I'm just not sold on Oregon at all.
I mean, after that game again, obviously after the season they had last year during COVID, they weren't really that impressive. And then you had the game they played last week against Fresno State, where it was like they almost lost that game. They got lucky; they managed to get by Fresno State. But I mean, obviously you have one of your better players go down with an injury last week, and you're very wondering, like, well, how do they respond? to Ohio State. The fact that people gave them a 12.2 percentage chance of possibly winning that game.
Yeah, that's ESPN's little football power index for those wondering that number.
But the fact that that's even a double digit is shocking. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that Oregon doesn't put up a fight at all. Like I'm not going to say they're going to get killed, because you never know with how Oregon will play against Ohio State, and we'll see how Ohio State comes out. But Ohio State beats them by probably like almost 20.
Yeah, I really think so. I think this is going to be one of those. Ohio State's a 14.5-point favorite. I think it'll be more than that. I think Ohio State, at some point, it's just going to turn into a beatdown.
Yep. I think the Pac-12's chances of getting in the playoff pretty much diminish with Oregon unless UCLA decides to run the table.
Exactly.
But even then, we'll need to see how they'll be.
Exactly. And now, the game I think America's waiting for, just to kind of see these two teams, Iowa and Iowa State. I mean, what more can you say? This is one of those matchups that a lot of people don't care about usually, but this year you absolutely need to know about this game.
Very much so. And I know me and you both are very excited, and I can't wait to watch it.
I'm actually going to switch this up here. I'm going to let you go first on this one.
All I know is with Iowa having a very impressive win over Indiana, and what looks with Iowa State not looking very good against Northern Iowa, you're thinking, Iowa is going to probably manhandle Iowa State. But people forget Iowa State still has a lot of good talent on that offense that could probably give the Hawkeyes some trouble. And also and Iowa State has a solid defense. I mean, they still have many guys that came back from last season. They were one of the better defenses in the Big 12. I mean, they managed to keep Oklahoma down for a long time at 17 until obviously the game went down to the wire in their first meeting, and then they had a very good game in the Big 12 championship, but obviously that became more high scoring. But Iowa State is much better than what they played against Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa just since they always give Iowa State and Iowa fits, I think Iowa State will be much better. Hawkeyes come out firing. Obviously, you still have very question marks on that offense, but you have two solid defenses, and I think Iowa has a better defense than Iowa State. But I want to think Iowa State just gets by. I'm going to be that guy and be like, I think it's Iowa State's time. Iowa State finally gets one over on the Hawkeyes, and I think Iowa State beats them by 3. Comes down to a field goal.
Well, I'm going to start mine with a little bit of a story. So in 2019, Iowa and Iowa State played in Ames, and it was about everything you'd want to see from a football game. Great offense, great defense, great special teams, horrible special teams, horrible offense, and horrible defense. It was everything in a football game you could imagine. And Iowa won because Iowa State had a guy running to tell his teammate, hey, I'm going to block for you. And it hit him in the back. And an Iowa player fell on it and won the game 18-17. I don't think that will happen this time, but I do think the result will be the same. At the end of the day, it will be known the state of Iowa is still going to be Hawkeye country. I'm taking Iowa in this one.
I think I'm obviously this is like the one we disagreed on.
Yeah.
Out of all the major picks we've done, this is the only one we disagreed.
Yeah. I think Iowa's defense is just too much. I really do. I think this is going to be one. Iowa State obviously is going to look great. I think Iowa State losing this game, I think they still shouldn't drop like below 12.
Oh no, they shouldn't.
Even if they lose this game, they're still a top.
This game is going to be a really tough one. It's basically like a heavyweight fight. That's exactly what it's going to be. They're going to slug back and forth. I think Iowa State's offense. I mean, not Iowa State. Iowa's offense plays a little better in some aspects. Like their quarterback play, I think, improves a little. They'll score on offense. Iowa's defense will give Iowa State a bit of issues here every now and then. They'll give Purdy some problems. But I think obviously Iowa State's Running back Hall, he'll have a good game. I think he'll have over 100 yards this game. I think Purdy comes out, plays a lot better. I think Iowa State's defense will cause a lot of issues for Iowa's offense. That's where I think it comes down to. Does Iowa's offense actually play better?
And I think they will.
I know, like I agree. I think they'll be better, but there's still that question mark. Do they play better than they did against Indiana, or do they not? Because if they play like how they did against Indiana, Iowa State will take advantage of that and probably get a few picks off of him if he throws the football. But you all see the run game needs to be better. You can't rely on your defense like you did against Indiana, where Indiana was a little too pass happy.
Yeah, I think that will be the battle I'm looking forward to the most. The Iowa defense versus the Iowa State offense.
Yeah, because we know Purdy can run the football if he needs to, and Hall is a great running back. He's arguably as of now is the best running back in the Big 12. But we'll see how that progresses through the season.
I'd say Bijan Robinson's already making a case.
Yeah,
Oklahoma, if they can start giving the ball to Kennedy Brooks, can make a case. I mean, there are going to be a lot of good running backs in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah, but it comes down to that Iowa defense and Iowa State's offense. How did those two play out? I think Iowa State's defense does cause problems for Iowa's offense. I think they get a few turnovers, which will be a difference maker. The game will still be close down to the wire, whether it be Iowa's victory or Iowa State's victory. But in my heart, I believe Iowa State will come out with that victory.
And in my heart, I believe Brock Purdy will throw a pick in the fourth quarter that changes the entire game.
Could be.
And Iowa wins like a 13-7 thriller or something like that.
I think it'll be a 2017. It'll be, once again, like that Big Ten, dragging out first team to 20 wins.
Yeah, I think so, too. This will be – I mean, I'm just so excited for this game. This game is finally getting the respect, in my opinion, it deserves, because this is one of those games that – every year it delivers. And now kind of some other games that I'm going to touch on, not really make predictions for, because these are kind of some of the other games going on. I think a really fun one will be Pitt and Tennessee at 11 a.m.
It'll be an interesting game.
A good one to kind of keep an eye on with Oregon and Ohio State if that one gets out of hand. I think kind of some other interesting stuff at noon. Florida goes to South Florida. See how the Gators look, trying to figure out who their quarterback's going to be for the year still.
I think South Florida probably might, for a tiny bit, like makes Florida second guess themselves, and then Florida eventually just pulls it together and blows them out.
Yeah, Georgia and UAB could be interesting for a moment, because I've heard Georgia, JT Daniels might not play. I've heard rumors that he got a little dinged up in practice maybe, and may not be good to go.
I mean, how do you get yourself dinged up in practice?
I don't know, but it was something very minor. I think that they're just like, okay, it's UAB. We can take the week off to rest it.
Yeah, this is I'm not, obviously, UAB not being that good. Obviously, in comparison to talent-wise, Georgia should kill them. Yes. I mean, you don't need your starting quarterback to get it done.
Another one, this is just kind of fun. South Carolina State at Clemson. How many points does Clemson put on South Carolina State?
I think obviously they're just going to take it out on them. Clemson's just going to kill them.
That's why I asked the question. This might be one of those someone scores 70, and it definitely is not going to be South Carolina State.
No, it won't not.
We'll get to see DJ Uiagalelei's talent finally unleashed, and I do feel really bad for the Bulldogs in this one. It'll be 4:00 on ACC Network. If you enjoy watching blowouts, then that's a game perfect.
It's something for you.
Now, blowout time is also competing with Alabama Mercer, which will be at 3. So pick your blowout if you're a fan of blowouts. You can just pick one there. Or you can watch Oklahoma Western Carolina at 6.
That's going to be another blowout.
Well, that's what I mean, if you're a fan of blowouts.
I mean, you got to pay the pay-per-view money to even watch it, or you just got to look the score on your phone.
Yeah. And then speaking of rivalries, though, CBS Sports Network at 5:30, Houston at Rice, the Bayou Bucket. It's back. And it may or may not be better than ever.
I don't think
Houston
so.
Not being as good, Rice existing.
Rice is just there.
I don't know. Another kind of fun North Texas rivalry, though, is North Texas at SMU. This is kind of a big rival. This is North Texas's big rival. I didn't even know this was a rivalry until a few days ago.
But
Yeah, they're not big fans of SMU up in Denton. They're probably not big fans of traffic either, but they've been under construction since before I was born. That's about all I can tell you about that.
What are roads?
That's the thing cars drive on and get stopped on every 30 seconds.
No, like Denton doesn't even know what that is.
No.
They literally.
It's just a giant traffic zone.
They don't have a finished road. It seems like, because I went down there a couple years ago for, with the jazz band, and we just. It was like there's like construction almost on almost every other road, and we were luckily, obviously you have lanes to drive on, luckily, but it's like some of the road. Luckily, the campus didn't have any traffic issues. It was literally everything outside the campus that seemed like it was under construction.
But that game will be on ESPN Plus at 6:00. That could be an interesting one, seeing how Tanner Mordecai and that offense looks for SMU.
SMU is going to be a kind of a little bit of a team to kind of keep an eye on. They've always been that team. Like when we see SMU do well, it's like the country actually looks and I'm like, oh my God, they're actually playing good.
Yeah, everyone kind of enjoys seeing SMU do well just because of they're finally recovering from the death penalty in the 80s.
Yeah, it's just amazing how so severe it was that a team that obviously for them, because they weren't like a major blue blood, we saw what happened to them. I'm actually curious what would have happened to an actual blue blood.
Like, what would have happened to Penn State if they would have gotten the hammer thrown at them for the Sandusky stuff? What would have happened to Baylor if they would have gotten the death penalty thrown on them for what happened there? Once again, kind of tying it up with conference realignment we talked about at the beginning, just the what-ifs of college football are almost as fun as watching the games themselves.
Yeah.
There's, over 100 years of history to pick from,
Or the storyline. It's literally a soap opera for guys.
You over here stealing my lines over here.
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, you said it, and it's a good one.
That's true. But speaking of fun storylines, first SEC game of the year, conference-wise, for Missouri and Kentucky playing each other. That will be kind of interesting to see how they react and do.
Yeah. You have two teams that relatively aren't really that great to watch. Like football-wise, not great to watch.
Not known for football as much.
Obviously, Missouri's a bit of a weird case because I know when they first came in were great, and then they've been bad ever since.
I think that was also the SEC East, if you remember that time was so terrible.
Yeah, that's true.
You had the legendary Will Muschamp Florida teams that got beat 42-14. I think they got beat 42-0 actually by Missouri and had like 100 yards of offense the entire game. And Missouri had like 3 pick sixes. It was ridiculous. I enjoyed it though, but it was ridiculous to watch.
But it's just one of those like, hey, it's there.
Yeah, it's just kind of. And speaking of kind of, hey, it's there. Something that I kind of am interested to see. How does Florida State respond after a just kind of very disappointing end of the Notre Dame game? They get Jacksonville State, which should be a win, but the last time they played Jacksonville State, the Gamecocks were up big heading into the second half. Florida State eventually turned it on and won, but it was kind of one of those, hey, wait a minute here, what's going on in Tallahassee?
Obviously, with how Florida State played against Notre Dame, I expect Florida State to be a much better football team.
I expect it too.
And I expect Florida, obviously, we should expect Florida State to beat them like they should be doing, because they're not really that great. Well, I don't know enough about Jack, besides obviously with the game last year, was that, oh my God, they're actually killing Florida State. I mean, we knew Florida State was bad at the time. It was just like, there's no way they're this bad. Like,
exactly.
Then obviously they turned around and won the game, because that was like the one I was like, I shouldn't really be watching this game, but I am watching this game.
That always seems to happen when you see like an FCS team beating an FBS team. I know when a few years ago, I think it was Jacksonville State. They were playing Auburn, and Auburn was supposed to be a top 5 team that year. Here's Jacksonville State just winning in the second half, in the fourth quarter, up 21-14. And then Auburn goes down, scores, ties it, goes to overtime, wins. Yeah. But it was just kind of like, Jacksonville State, they like to do that. They beat Ole Miss a decade ago. Now, granted, that has nothing to do with this game and just kind of.
Oh, yeah.
But they're a team that's always consistently They're always kind of a good measuring stick for FBS teams. How good really are you?
Yeah.
Can you beat one of the top tier one of the top tier programs in the FCS, not the pinnacle of like a North Dakota State or James Madison?
It's like
but
it's
they're
like,
always in the mix.
I kind of wish FCS those top tier FCS teams would actually take more time to play FBS schools at least once every few years.
I'd love to play North Dakota State.
But
I absolutely would love to see OU play them.
Because obviously the best game I know North Dakota State won was the Iowa game they played when they had a few years ago.
Yes.
They went into Hawkeye territory and beat them.
When you're able to pull out a win at Kinnick like that, that's always impressive.
Yeah, but we'll just see how things are.
And then the final kind of game I want to touch on here is the Saturday night football game. Kind of weird that we've gone this entire time talking about all these other games and not what is usually considered the marquee game of the night, but it's really not that impressive this week. I mean, it's Washington at Michigan. Washington, we already saw that they are probably not as good as advertised.
I mean, you lost to Montana State.
Or just Montana.
Oh, Montana. I keep thinking State after that. But, I mean, you lost to them at home. Mm-hmm. That's not good.
Yeah. And Montana is a good team, to give them credit. They're always a consistent FCS contender. But if you're going to be a top 20 team in the FBS, you have to beat a team like Montana.
That's the worst part of it, is that if they were unranked and everyone was like, they're not really that good, that's one thing. But it's another whenever you're a top 25 team and you lose and you only score 7 points.
Exactly. It's your first drive of the game.
And at home. You're losing at home to a team you should be beating. So
exactly.
That's what made that. So that matchup should have been advertised as a top 20 team that Michigan could possibly take down and prove that, hey, we're still here. Now it's like, well, it's kind of become an afterthought.
Yeah, they kind of tried to set up a Big Ten Pac-12 challenge weekend with those games, but one of them is still hyped up as advertised, and the other one kind of became a dud.
I know we're not really doing much on predictions for that, but I'd say for that game, Michigan beats them.
Yeah, I would not be surprised at all to see Michigan win that game.
Actually, with the way things are, I wouldn't be surprised if Michigan just starts actually playing up to how they should be and kills them.
We're kind of looking at Michigan's schedule here. I mean, this is a good game for them because you get Washington at home, then you get Northern Illinois, then Rutgers, who, keep in mind, Rutgers is improved.
Mm-hmm.
That is something to keep in mind. And then you go to Wisconsin, then you go to Nebraska, then Northwestern, then at Michigan State, Indiana, at Penn State, at Maryland, then Ohio State, of course, to end the year. I mean, this is a Michigan team that could have a pretty good record.
I'd say the Wisconsin could give them problems. Michigan State probably could actually cause some problems. I know you still play Penn State, but they have a chance to go into their final week against Ohio State with 9-10 wins.
Yeah, I mean,
depending on how good advertised they are, I think they probably drop a game.
Yeah, I think they either drop it to Penn State, Wisconsin, or Michigan State.
It's one of those three teams. I obviously will. Predictions.
We'll cross that bridge
when we get much later in the year. But relatively as of right now, they probably lose their second or third game against Ohio State if depending on how Michigan goes into that game. But once again, obviously Michigan has a lot of chances to do something, but there's really not much there for them.
There really isn't, and it's one of those things that I guess it's just kind of sad to see the state that Michigan is in right now, where they used to be one of the most respected teams in college football, and I really think ever since that loss to App State in 2007,
they have not been the same.
They've just kind of been a joke of a program, whether it being Brady Hoke, the clap master, the man liked to clap. Let's just say that.
Man, you gave Garrett a run for his money.
Yeah. I mean, you have just the entire Harbaugh era where it started strong. It started amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like, okay, this is the Michigan we've been waiting to see since the late 90s. And then after 2017, 2018, they just fell off a cliff.
They haven't been the development of those players just never got any better. I think the issue around them is that they need a solid quarterback. I mean, yes, they keep getting what appears to be 4 or 5-star quarterbacks. They're going there, but they don't look like it.
They kind of remind me of like an LSU type situation where if you can just get a quarterback and not just a good quarterback, I'm talking an elite quarterback, you will finally be able to stand up to Ohio State.
Yep.
Same thing happened with LSU. First time in forever, they finally had an elite quarterback in Joe Burrow. They were able to take down Alabama and win a national title.
I mean,
you either need to have one of the greatest defenses on earth or an elite quarterback. And I don't think Michigan's going to have an elite defense anytime soon.
Their defense will be, I think, by Big Ten standards, be pretty good.
Yeah, I'm not saying it'll be
but
bad.
They're not going to be Ohio State, where Ohio State is just elite in every aspect.
Yes.
It's like Ohio State has always I think ever since the Woody Hayes era, Ohio State's always been a great football team through those years, and still has remained great because they get the right people, they get the right coaches, and they get the right recruits. But obviously, we'll have to see how things will turn out. But,
exactly. And then to kind of end it here, talking about some of the games tomorrow, I'm just going to kind of give a rundown that we have games tomorrow.
Yeah.
We also have football tonight in about 35 minutes or so with the Cowboys taking on the Buccaneers, if you're an NFL fan. But Friday night, Kansas goes to Coastal Carolina. That's kind of a good game for Kansas just to see where you're at. New coach, once again, Lance Leopold, coming into Conway on the teal turf, trying to see if you can beat the Chanticleers. And then North Carolina A&T at Duke. I mean, that's one of those games where it's like North Carolina A&T is a pretty good program, and HBCU actually very competitive in the FCS.
Yeah.
And I mean, Duke's coming off losing to Charlotte. Charlotte's first ever win over a Power 5 team. So, I mean, I don't know where Duke is at this year. I mean, not saying North Carolina A&T is going to win, but they might hang around for a while.
I wouldn't be surprised if they win.
And then at 8 o'clock on CBS Sports, the other games a bit earlier in the day. But once we get kind of late night here, North Dakota at Utah State, a little mountain weird, as I like to call it. I mean, you never really know what's going to happen out here, especially in Logan, Utah, of all places.
Yep.
But then at 8:30 on FS1, UTEP takes on Boise State. I think Boise State will get the job done, but I mean, it's always nice seeing football on a Friday night.
Oh, yeah.
Not to mention all the high school games that always go on here in Oklahoma as well.
Chanticleers should beat Kansas, Duke, I think. Duke probably, you think should, but
this should be one of those nights where all the home teams win.
The home team should win, but you never know. Except with Duke, you don't know.
Yeah,
because they're just not good at football.
No.
Besides they had a couple years like in the mid 2010s where they were surprisingly good.
I still remember that one year they won their division and everyone tried to hype them up like they could beat Florida State, and it was like,
no.
Florida State is Jameis Winston. No. End of story. Not even to mention all the other talent on that Florida State team, but no.
Just no.
And it was like 41-7.
You have to somehow hype that game up.
I mean, that's why I felt bad for ABC. He was like, here's the number one team in the country, and Duke. How do you hype a game up like that?
It's because obviously Duke's out of nowhere. You're not used to seeing them, and it's just really hard to get people interested in a game where it's just like, oh, it's Duke.
Yeah, I was like, I know what the result's going to be, and I don't even have to watch it.
Plus, Florida State was just that much better.
Exactly. But I believe, let's see here. I just kind of looking at, we've pretty much covered every major game. Well, one little minor rivalry game to add. New Mexico State and New Mexico. Rio Grande rivalry. Always a fun time for those two.
Yeah.
New Mexico schools. I mean, that's not a game, not a nationally known game or anything, but I mean, it's always nice to see little rivalry games like that.
And plus, you never know, see how those teams will turn out.
Exactly. Now, kind of something I want to do here. What do you predict will be the biggest storyline or the biggest takeaway from Saturday? Of all the things, considering how we picked it to go and everything.
I think one of the biggest ones is obviously, well, I'd say a big one is obviously you have your Iowa State. Does Iowa State prove that they're a much better program than we think than how they came off against Northern Iowa? And do they get one over? And if they get one over, people like, oh, they're going to be in the running because they beat a top 10 Iowa team who is really good. And then obviously we'll see how Texas is. Do they go out of Fayetteville, out of that hostile environment with a smooth victory?
Exactly.
And do they prove that they're quote unquote back?
Well, I still think for Texas to be back, truly, if they beat Arkansas and they beat Oklahoma and they beat Iowa State, if they win the big games they're supposed to win this year, and they are actually very good, I'll consider them being back. But you have to prove it first.
They have to win. I'll agree with you. Like, they have to win the big. I know they have to win the Big 12, but obviously, you know how like a lot of the sports pundits will do. They'll try to like Texas is back. Like, they'll try to hype them up as much as they
and then
can.
you got to be consistent. That's part 2 of it.
Yeah, it's like that's the one problem. It's like they could have one great, like the 2017 year where they were really good. They only lost 2 games that entire season. 2018. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They won those 2 games and then just beat the crap out of Georgia. And then obviously Ellinger said, we're back. And then the next year they were a dud.
Then it was narrated. They were not back.
They are not back. It's like you have to win and stay consistent to prove that you're back. And that's what Penn State had to do for when they finally got good again.
Yeah, I mean, they proved they were back with the win against Ohio State. Everyone said, okay, Penn State might finally be back. And then they backed it up by being consistent from there on out.
Yeah, I mean, though they have not won their division, and quite a bit, they've proven
always been a contender.
They've been a contender. That's
Texas, where they can either spin out by like week 9, and it's like, okay, we can write Texas off, or they're in it till the end, but then just get nudged out.
And obviously another thing is between the Oregon and Ohio State, if Oregon can get a victory over Ohio State, they'll be like, Pac-12 is still in it, but if they lose, we'll be talking about, the Pac-12 is a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, we'll be talking about how the fate of the Pac-12 is in Chip Kelly's hands potentially, but not with Oregon, but with UCLA.
But with UCLA. Well, and the fact that you'll have to, I know USC is still there, they're still ranked, but no one's really looking at the Trojans.
No,
obviously, me and you haven't really been that impressed with them.
Yeah, I'm still waiting to see how that Notre Dame game goes. If they're still good after Utah and Notre Dame and look impressive, I'll jump on that bandwagon. But I mean, looking at their second half of the year at Notre Dame, at Arizona State, at Cal, UCLA, BYU. I mean, just about every game you're going to play in here is a divisional game, a rivalry game, or BYU, which is always a fun experience.
And really, the only easy game out of all those, depending on how the season goes, is Cal.
Yeah, and I mean, that's at Berkeley, too. So Cal always gives USC a tough fight. I mean, that's just one of those California school things.
Yeah, so we'll have to see how the Trojans truly are. But once again, it's like they have to, obviously, this first half, not really much to look at. If they lose one to Stanford, which obviously we know how the Pac-12 is, because that happens.
If they lose one of their next 4, USC's in trouble.
Yeah,
I'll just say it like that. If they lose Stanford, at Washington State, Oregon State at home, or at Colorado, USC's in serious trouble.
Yeah, they can't lose any of those games.
They really cannot.
If they lose one of those games, they're going to be written off immediately. And it'll all come down to UCLA.
Absolutely. Well, I figured out an actual good way to end the show. It's kind of, I guess, rant time, because I just remembered Toledo and Notre Dame is going to be on Peacock. And to me, that is just absolutely despicable. That is just, why would you do that? There's no reason in the world that game needs to be put on a pay-per-view service. We're trying to get rid of pay-per-view games.
Well, Peacock's a streaming service.
I know, but at the same time, it's like,
still
Notre Dame is always on NBC. That's one of those, you always put it on there. It's an easy-to-find game. It's always enjoyable. And even when they play these kind of, not body bag games, but even these kind of lesser-known games like Toledo, I still want that to be on NBC. That's still...
Well, and also, it gives NBC some sports on their main channel.
Yes.
The fact that you're not doing that and you're kind of just like, whatever. It's like, this is why why I think Notre Dame needs to really get out of their deal with NBC, because NBC has really shown with all their sports that they just don't really care. They claim that we care about what the Olympics, yes, but you're still losing quite a bit of money by doing that.
Well, I mean, with NBC, it's just, I think they've made it very clear they don't care about sports. They really don't.
And that was
this goes back to the Olympics, with most of all of that being on Peacock. I tried to watch some of the USA games for either softball or basketball. They would air it on tape delay, which was nice, but if you wanted to watch the game live, oops, you got to pay us $10 a month to watch it. I'm not going to pay $10 a month to watch 3 games.
Yeah.
Then cancel the service. That's ridiculous.
And then it's bad management with NBC, but due to the fact they are owned by Comcast.
Yeah.
Comcast doesn't really do a great job. It's a lot of just bad things just being managed.
Especially out here, especially for us being in a more rural area here in little old Alva, Oklahoma. It's not like we're going to get great reception with it either, you know.
No.
Pay $5-10 a month for a Notre Dame game against Toledo.
No.
Only to see like maybe 8 seconds of it totally, because it keeps buffering the entire time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a problem with ESPN Plus too. And you know what? Forget it. I'm going to go into ESPN Plus too, because I was trying to watch the ending of the Iowa State Northern Iowa game, and they legit cut the last 2 minutes of the game off due to technical difficulties. And I understand that sometimes that happens, but it's like, I think literally some of those broadcast crews are just like unpaid interns, it feels like, where they're just like, I don't want to do this, I'm going home.
Wait, now, that just makes me question why have ESPN Plus if it doesn't feel like you're really putting any care into it.
The same thing happened with Baylor and Texas State, actually, where Texas State straight up admitted, oh yeah, these are just some of our student workers doing the game that wanted to do it. And so they messed up, or not the student workers per se messed up, but something went wrong and they couldn't replay, because you use the replay system from television also help for video review.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have the instant replay set up, Baylor got robbed of a touchdown in the game. Now, thankfully for the Bears, it didn't come back to bite them, but imagine if they would have lost by like anywhere between 7-1. Just knowing that, hey, we won this game, but because ESPN Plus and everything else is so messed up, we can't actually review anything.
This is, and it really just comes down to how is ESPN really managing their stuff. It's like all their main televised games, like whether it be on ESPN, ESPN2, ABC, all this stuff. Yes, they're professionally run. They're actually done well. But when it comes to ESPN Plus, it doesn't feel like they're really.
It feels like I've seen better high school productions here in Oklahoma than I have on ESPN Plus.
And that's bad.
Exactly. When I can watch a high school game between two teams that I don't care about as of the moment, but then we'll care about probably later in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But when I can watch that and it looks like a higher production quality than Oklahoma State and Missouri State, where I mean, to give them credit, Brandon Whedon actually did a pretty good job color commentating.
The commentating was actually on point for the most part.
I had no problem with that.
I thought was really great. The play-by-play woman, she was very great. Brandon Whedon, looked like he didn't show any form of bias whatsoever. I mean, yes, he has more connections with Oklahoma State and talked quite a bit about being a part and watching the stuff, but he talked a lot about Missouri State.
He did.
And made them seem like, oh yeah, they're a pretty good FCS team. So it's one of those things. Just like they did a great job with what they were giving. You could tell the production value was not there on par with like what would be on ESPN.
And I don't expect it to be like an ABC level quality broadcast. Just make it look decent. You've done decent productions before online. You do it with softball and baseball every year for their postseason. For college softball and college baseball.
Like, as much as they don't really, it seems like they really do not care about college baseball. Maybe that's due to the fact that the MLB doesn't want to deal with college baseball. College baseball still looks competently ran like by professionals, even though you can tell these are guys you typically don't really hear or listen to.
Exactly.
but they seem like professional. Like all of them are. It's professionally made, is what it looks like. Even though you can tell it's not the same production value. That's the problem. That's what ESPN Plus needs to be. Look professionally ran, even though it's not the best aspects of it.
Yeah, it may at least look professional. Don't have like these little technical glitches and things and do that happen at the worst time. Because what ended up happening with the Iowa State game, to go full circle back to that, is someone legitimately in the chat I was watching it with, someone had to link a security camera footage point of construction, which conveniently had the Iowa State scoreboard in the background, and we're having to watch the game on a minified version of the Jumbotron, and it was the most, and they would give live updates as it was happening. They finally came back on for the final play, but by that point it was like, well, how did Northern Iowa travel 25 yards down the field in 2 minutes? I guess we'll never know because we don't have the footage of it. That's what it kind of worried me. What if Northern Iowa would have won that game and no one saw it happen? How would you feel knowing you're Northern Iowa and your biggest win in a while just magically disappeared and no one got to see it happen? You just had to hear about it.
That's one of those things. It's like ESPN, and I know ESPN's had their issues here and there when it comes to keeping a hold of employees or having to get rid of people because of money issues, but they make so much money. It's weird how they have to keep releasing people, and it just this is something that they need to really reevaluate themselves to figure out, how do we make these ESPN Plus games desirable to watch? Just make it look professionally ran. It doesn't have to be the best quality, like best aspects of quality. Obviously, your primetime games on regular ESPN or ABC are going to be the most the best it can ever be, which as it should be.
Exactly.
But these games need to be treated just as good in some aspects, just as good as your regular televised games.
Exactly. If they just kind of were like, oh, well, and I think they really do this, and I hate that they do this, where it's like, oh, it's, a Big 12 team versus an FCS team. No one's gonna watch this game. We don't have to try.
I want to watch it.
I was like, joke's on you. A lot of people want to watch these games, and if you can't provide the service to watch the games, what are we even doing here?
It's like, why am I paying like $7?
Yeah, why are you paying money to watch it? Now, the Missouri State Oklahoma State game, I didn't have as much trouble with, and I'm glad.
Yeah, I was able to actually, when I was watching it, I didn't have any issues. I was able to watch the game no problem.
Exactly. I was able to have a lot of fun for about 12 minutes.
I was pulling my hair out.
I had to kind of, I guess, go into detail here. I had my phone ready. Like, when Missouri State recovered the onside kick, I pulled my phone out. I was like, okay, Connor, text, lol. And I just had it ready to send in case Missouri State tied it, and then they never did, and it made me sad.
And I'm so happy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just going back to this, what if that game, something happens at the end and Missouri State wins, and no one knows what happens until like half an hour later?
I'm good. My parents were at the game, so I would have known the result no matter what.
Exactly. You would have known, but like
you
me,
wouldn't have.
I would have been like,
I probably would have called you and be screaming my head off.
Yeah, I would have been smiling from ear to ear and be like, yeah, so sad, Please don't fire Gundy, Just keep him if you're going to lose to Bobby Petrino, Missouri State. Just keep him. But knowing how that works, the last time OU fans wanted a rival to keep their head coach, bad things happened. So I still remember seeing keep Mac Brown shirts around Norman only to get beat by him in 2013. It's still one of the most depressing losses I've seen OU do in a while. I mean, not to get too much on a tangent right here at the end of the broadcast, but there's a reason why, as much as I like trash talking, I don't do it as much as I used to, because nearly every time I do it, OU decides, oh, hey, you decide to trash talk someone. We're going to look terrible now.
part of the reason why I don't do it either. I'm just like, I just hope we actually do something good.
I wait until after the game to begin like, oh, look at how great this is. Look at how terrible your team looks.
Yeah, pretty much. That's what I do.
And then you pray, fingers crossed, next year that they don't get revenge on you, because then you got to hear it dished back at you.
That's how rivalries are.
Yeah, well, that's how football.
Well,
Yeah.
But
That's
usually,
how being in the Big 12 is.
But yeah, that's pretty much. It's just like you have issue. I kind of wish these games were not on streaming services, or at least they were completely ran on streaming services. It's like when NBC really delegates your games to a streaming service.
That shows they don't care.
Yeah,
to me.
It's one thing if the conference makes a deal to like, hey, your games aren't always televised. Let's put them on this. That way, people who want to watch you can come watch you.
Exactly.
And also it's at a price where a lot of people have got the subscriptions and they watch the games. But their issue with ESPN is some of them are not competently ran at times, and the quality really differs.
Exactly.
On game to game.
Like, if I was a Notre Dame fan, I would be absolutely livid that this was on Peacock of all things.
Which is why you're going to wish that, you know what, we're done. Like, this is what you want to get. You probably start looking at someone else to do a contract with.
Exactly. Like, as an OU fan, I'm sick and tired of the pay-per-view games. I don't know why we ever agreed to do that deal. I still don't know why. But that's one thing about moving to the SEC, to kind of go full circle with. We end with realignment and we start with realignment. But to
kind of poetic that way.
Yeah, but that's one thing I am happy about with OU leaving, at least, is those games are gone. I don't ever have to deal with that ever again. If we play Western Carolina, it'll just be on the SEC network. I might still have to go to my computer to watch it, but at least it's free and not $40.
Yeah, at least because you have your account, or if it's there for free, go ahead and watch it.
I would rather pay $7 to watch one OU game than $40 to watch.
Probably depending on who they play on opponents and what gets put on the SEC network, you might watch a few games on there.
Exactly. It might be a few games. It might be every OU softball game is on there. Once we get to softball season, I mean, that's another thing. That's another subject entirely for another different day, though. So let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to bring up, really, but
we kind of really hammered home on certain aspects. I think we obviously ran through all the games, obviously kind of went in depth on certain aspects. We had our rants of the day.
Yeah,
for me, it was more my rant for the week.
Yeah, I mean that might be something that we do a bit more of. The first time OU loses, there'll be like a 35-minute portion of the show devoted to.
I'll just sit back and relax and just be like, I'm just gonna wait for him to finish.
Yeah, it won't for a while. It'll be. This is why we're not winning a national title, and you'll just be like, huh. Here's
what will probably happen. I'll put a timer on. I give you probably a certain amount of time, and you rant in that time, and then we'll have to move on.
Probably. That's
the only way we're moving on.
Yeah, that's what I legitimately thought we were going to have to do today, because I thought I legitimately, in my heart of hearts, thought Missouri State was going to win that game. The second they recovered that onside kick, I was just like, it's over. It's absolutely over. Missouri State is about to win. But then bad snap and everything, and I was just like, oh.
If you could see my face right now, I'm cringing in pain.
But it was one of those, I was just like so ready for it to happen. I'm kind of like probably how you felt with the OU Tulane game. Once I was like, they recovered an onside kick, and you're just probably like,
yeah,
yeah,
I'm watching that with you. I think I went. No, I was actually gone.
Yeah, you were gone when that part was
I was actually getting us some pizza when that happened, and I was like, oh crap, I'm about to miss this, and then I came back right after they
you
pretty
came
much just
back,
got done.
And I was just like,
well, I was getting ready to laugh so hard. If you guys would have lost, and then we would have lost to Missouri State, I'm like, I'm more down to the dumps than New York because we lost to an FCS school.
Yeah, so that would have been a great day for Texas fans, but that's about it. But I mean, that was just. I mean, I'm glad that's behind us. I'm looking forward to Saturday. Looking forward to Friday night as well. I mean, we got high school football up here. Alva taking on Fairview. Rivalry there. A lot of rivalries. That's kind of the theme of the week, I guess you could say. Yeah. A lot of rivalries. And I mean, it is just going to be an absolute blast these next 2 days.
And we also have for Northwestern, we're going up to Henderson State.
Exactly. Northwestern travels to Arkadelphia to take on the Reddies. That's a big game for Northwestern. Henderson State, always one of the top dogs in the GAC.
And
I mean, that's one of those kind of big name games you got to win.
Despite the fact with and the weirdest thing is, out of all the better schools in our conference, we actually have quite a bit of wins on them.
Yeah, that's one of the few teams we're actually a bit more competitive with. But I believe, I was looking this up earlier, I believe Henderson State has won 5 of the 7 we've played against, or 5 of the 7 they've played against us.
Yeah, because my few years ago, my first year here, we actually beat them at home, if I remember correctly. If my memory serves me right, but it's kind of been hit and miss through the years ever since we've been in the GAC with them.
Actually, this is kind of a good way to wrap this up. Kind of recapping what happened in the GAC this week. I mean, Northwestern obviously losing 32-13 to Southern Arkansas.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Henderson State. Speaking of them, they defeated Southwestern 31-13. That was
almost mirrored.
Yeah, almost mirrored what we did. I mean, it was very impressive. They had a very solid ground game from what I saw, at least stat-wise. It was pretty impressive to see. And then going back here, a lot of these were played September 2nd, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
But, I mean, let's see here. Actually, let me scroll all the way up to the scoreboard I have here, which takes a long time to get to. All right, yeah, Ouachita Baptist, who is supposed to be really good again this year, they actually got a scare from Oklahoma Baptist. Ouachita winning 38-31. And then Arkansas Monticello defeating Southern Nazarene 30-23.
Ooh, that's a little close with when you're dealing with Southern Nazarene.
Exactly. And then Southeastern defeated Arkansas Tech 38-20.
Yeah, that's one of the weaker teams out of Arkansas.
And then there was one Saturday game. So we had a bunch of Fridays, or not Fridays, Thursdays. I wish it was on Friday. But we had one Saturday football game, and it was Harding beating East Central 28-0. Harding looked like Harding. Let's just say it like that.
Yeah, that's the simplest way to say it.
Yeah, they're going to be a top 15 team again, as is Ouachita Baptist.
Mm-hmm.
Oklahoma Baptist looks pretty good this year too, but Henderson State also looking pretty good. Northwestern will have their hands full. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. But we'll just hopefully we can go into Henderson State and actually give them a fight, and hopefully we could possibly come away with the victory. But who really knows how that will turn out? Hopefully we can improve on the offensive line and protect Tanner.
Exactly. Because, I mean, he threw for 413 yards against them.
Like obviously with the stat line, I know his completion to attempt ratio, not exactly the best, but the fact he still threw over 400 yards is like, if we can protect him, we could see a lot of success with that offense.
Exactly.
Like the defense can make, I think, what we saw when they play when they played
Southern Arkansas.
Southern Arkansas. Apologies, I'm struggling with names, but when they played Southern Arkansas, that defense stopped them several times. The issue was the offense struggled to do much, but hopefully they can make some improvements with the line, and they'll be able to protect Tanner better and possibly give Henderson a scare and maybe even take away a victory.
Exactly.
That's what we can hope for, but we'll find out Saturday.
And I think that's probably the best note to end this on. We'll find out Saturday. We'll find out a lot on Saturday.
We'll find out a lot.
We're not only in the GAC, but across the country. For my co-host, Connor Gray, I am Cade Kennedy. Have a great night, everybody.